third quarter, our topic's going to be, what are some ways that you personally frame the new year to help your personnel and your team focus on the year ahead and forget 2021? Whether you had the best year in your business, or you're 16-1, or you're 7-7, how do we end 2021, frame 2022, and focus on what's coming ahead?
Yeah, for sure. I was going to make a mention that you were talking about us that pull stuff from our coaches. I still try to figure out, it's hard for me to have my team go out in the parking lot and run gassers if they don't listen. If you guys have any recommendations on that, just let me know. But as far as closing the book, I'm probably at a big disadvantage, or maybe my team's at a big disadvantage. It's really easy for me to pivot. And I was listening to this #1 recruit quarterback that just went and signed with A&M, and they were doing an interview with him, and he said, what do you contribute a lot of your success to? And he said, baseball. And I thought that was interesting. And the guy asked him why, and he said, because in baseball, it's a game of failure. It's complete failure, right? You could be only successful 30% of the time, and you're still making it to the Hall of Fame. And that's kind of the way that I guess my mentality is. And so regardless of good or bad year, call, pop by, whatever it may be, it's really easy for me to shut that off and move on to the next thing. So really, I try to position that to the team and go, you're only as good as your next call. You're only as good as your next sale. You're only as good as your next at bat, if you will. So what we've done is awesome. Let's cap it. Let's shut it off. And then once we have that conversation of what do we do well, what do we not do well, then we immediately start planning and briefing the next project. I was mentioning to you a book that I'm reading called Flawless Execution right now. And it's built off of, just for everybody that's kind of listening, it's built off of a mantra from ex-fighter pilots. And they came out and they built a coaching organization called Afterburner. And the whole mantra behind that is, how do you take an 18-year-old kid that barely knows how to drive a car, and then within 3 years, he's flying an $80 million machine? And then how do you do that again as soon as that guy retires and the next guy's there, right? So it's just a stage of plan, execute, brief, and debrief. And as soon as you debrief that day, that week, that last call, you're automatically going back into your planning session again, and it helps cut one off and then go right into the next, right? So to me, we just try to frame it in that planning session. And once that debrief's done, we're not talking about it again, right? We're jumping in and we're planning the next year, quarter, week, day, call, project, whatever that may be.
Coach Prock.
Yes, sir.
Could you touch on how you frame, this next year? You guys are moving into conference now. So how are you framing that and moving on from the 7-7 start?
Yeah, absolutely. Dustin kind of stole a little bit of my thunder there talking, because I tell our girls all the time that this is a game of mistakes. One of the fortunate things I have is I'm actually on the national committee, which actually helps select the NCAA tournament. So, I tell I was on with the lady, last year, looking at those teams that made the Elite Eight, Michael. They're teams that have shot 35-40% from the field, shoot 35-30% from the 3-point line, whatever the case may be. And I told our ladies, I said, ladies, if you got that on a test, that's a failure. If you shot 50% from the free throw line, that's a failing. But in basketball, of course, that's not great from the free throw line, but in basketball, if you shoot 50% from the field, I mean, that's a huge success. So one of the things that I try to do at this point, Michael, is really look at, exactly, when I know I've kind of mentioned this before, but understanding where truly is our strengths and how better can I hide our weaknesses. Because like a lot of times you can get better on your weaknesses, but it's not going to get just a ton better at this point. And so those weaknesses are what they are. So how, as a coach, can I go back and hide that weakness even more? Because, because Coach Watson knows you're going to watch film, people are going to see you, they're going to identify those weaknesses. So it's up to me, how to hide those more, and I put the record on the board. I said, I told our ladies, and look, I've told them already, like our conference, or our schedule so far. I mean, I can tell you right now, just being on the committee, that our schedule has been the toughest in the country. I mean, I know it has been. And so what I do is I put a whiteboard before we start back in this next part of the season is you're 0-0 right now. Because when it comes down to Division II women's basketball, it comes down to your region record. And right now, I'll also put up there a record of 4-2, because that's what we are in region. And that's what matters. And at the end of the day, where we want to get to is to get to the NCAA tournament. And how do we get evaluated on our region record? A lot of times, I think people look at your overall record, they say, well, you're this and that. Well, it comes down to your region record. It comes down to your conference success. And if we can get our ladies to understand that. And I know kids can be hard on themselves, and so when they do see that, sometimes they're like, well, we aren't where we are. Well, yeah, we really are. And we're doing really, really well. And to be honest with you, we've beaten a team that's probably as good as anybody's win that anybody's had in our region, and so, like, when you look at the positive sides of what we've done, it's been really good. And I think that, again, just getting our team to understand right now is the most important part. Right now is where we got to shift our focus. And this is where we get a chance to get to where we want to get to, and so, and I just think, again, just getting the kids to understand that this is a game of mistakes, that it's going to happen. You're going to, I mean, again, all sports are that way. You just could, but like Dustin mentioned baseball. I mean, sports is just a game of failure, and it's how you respond to that failure is how we're going to become better. And that's what we emphasize to our kids.
From your individual business perspective, how are you framing next year for yourself and moving on from 2021?
Well, for me, it's important that I take some time and identify, like, in advance, what is going to motivate me to get past any frustrations that I come across or setbacks. Real estate is a tricky business where it doesn't really matter how much you work at something, like, you get paid when the transaction closes, right? And there are so many factors that you have no control over between when you start working with a client to, like, the closing table, that you could put in hours and hours and hours of work and not see the end result, and you don't have any control over that. And being married to a coach, I think that sometimes that's a little bit the same, where, you put in hours and hours and hours of dedication, but what happens, like, in their actual, like, do they make that shot? Do they not make that shot? Like, you don't actually have control over that, right? And so it's a lot to kind of, to be able to process on a daily basis. And, like, there are some disappointments that it doesn't matter how much you prepared, just happened, and they don't really have anything to do with your work ethic or your performance. And so, like, when those things happen, going forward, and I can't just be like, okay, well, now it's just time to find a 9-to-5 desk job again, then I know I have a steady paycheck based on just showing up for 8 hours a day or whatever it is. And so, this time of year, I kind of identify what is going to motivate me when there are setbacks, and I set goals that I can work toward that are separate from, like, my transactional real estate goals. And then additionally some other goals, because the flip side of real estate is sometimes you're just killing it, right? And so then the things that are still going to motivate me and to not become complacent when maybe everything is going my way, and it's, and we're just printing money over here. And I mean, that's a benefit of real estate too, right? But at the same time, when those things happen, I know that I need other goals to keep me inherently motivated and not just say, oh, well, things are going my way, you know? And so this time of year is where I really look and set my non-business transactional kind of goals that are either like the carrots that I have dangling when things are not going well, or, you know, the things that are going to take me to the next level when things are going really well.
Coach Watson, you're in a unique situation right now. I know it's probably not the first time you've been in it, but one district game under your belt. So you really are just going back, you know, in this new year. I know you got a couple Christmas tournament games, but then as you talked about earlier, the games that count are coming up. So how do you frame that with your young men that, you know, we're 16-1 in 2021, but what really counts is coming up?
Correct. Well, and I love how we talked about the game being a game of mistakes, and I jotted down the old quote from Bob Knight because he always talked about that too, and he always said victory favors the team that makes the fewest mistakes, and really it does come down to that, and you have to be willing to look at your mistakes and you learn from those mistakes, and I've done far more probably learning than I think we as people probably do far more learning from losing than we do from winning. Winning sometimes, you know, can make us complacent, and we have to search a little harder for those things maybe to get better at. But I loved how that was brought up just there, just a little bit ago. As far as us kind of going forward, you know, we have talked about breaking this thing into chunks, and now that we're out of that preseason period, it really sets up well to do that. You got district play. We're in a district with 7 teams, so we get that bye in there in the middle of it. I don't know that I love that, but we're going to play 6 district games the first half of district, then we're going to turn around and play 6 more. So we told the kids, you know, early on, look, you got to win 7 games to win a state championship once you get into the playoffs. And I don't want to put the cart before the horse here, but, you know, we're going to break this thing up into 3 separate seasons here. The first half of district play, and then those 6 games, kind of see where we're at, reevaluate things. Hopefully we put ourselves in a good position to go close the deal the second half of district. One thing we will always do is challenge the guys to be a little bit better the second time around than they were the first time around, because everybody's seen each other by then. And a lot of times, you know, like the position we were in last year, you know, we kind of got out in front of everyone, and you know, we always talk about you're having to take the other team's best shot when you're in our position. Well, especially in the second half of district, because some of those people are fighting for a spot in the playoffs, and you know, you're definitely going to take their best shot. You know, we haven't always been in this position since we've been at the 6A level. We've, you know, a lot of times we're in that 3-4 spot. We're looking up at teams like Allen and Jesuit and Denton Geyer, and we always felt like when we played those teams in the past that we were kind of playing with house money, and if we could slip up on one of them, that's a game that the other teams, you know, that are fighting for one of those spots aren't going to win. So it gives us a leg up. And fortunately, a couple of those years, as a matter of fact, the year that Allen won the state championship, you know, we beat them in district play the first half of district, and that kind of helped us with our own playoff seeding, because no one else was able to do that except for Geyer. But anyway, so with this group, it's just like, hey, look, understand that you're the hunted now. You need to embrace the idea that every time you step on the floor, you're going to get the other team's best shot. And we've talked to them about, hey, these guys are playing with house money, and they're going to play loose. They're going to play their best game against you, and you have to embrace that, and you have to meet that, you know, intensity level, and hopefully use that to make you better. You know, we've got the tournament, which is kind of tricky, next week in between the first district game and then district play resuming. So how we kind of approach that is, I don't want to put too much into it. We've got an opportunity. I'll call it an opportunity. And there's a good chance that we could play the number 3 team in 5A the number 1 team in 6A and the number 2 team in 6A in that tournament next week. It's a gauntlet. And really the deal there is, okay, this will be a good barometer to see how we match up. Because when you play those really, really good teams, they're going to test you. They're going to show you what your weaknesses are. Whatever that is, they're going to come out in those types of games. And then if you see those teams down the line, you have something to kind of build from. But so really, once we get past that, again, we're going to chunk it up. 5 more games the first half of district, and then we're going to reevaluate after that and go into that next half of district, and then hopefully we qualify for the playoffs. Hopefully, our seeding is where we want it to be, and then we can kind of change our focus into playoff mode. So I like how that kind of breaks up. But really, I'm a big, and I think a lot of people on here are probably big fans of the Saban and Belichick model of the process, and making sure we trust the process, and making sure that we understand that every single day, every single drill, every single rep is important. And so we can't look past the game that's in front of us. We got to get dialed into that game that's right there, and then take it a step further to even more of a micro level. And hey, that possession, whether it's offense or defense, go try to win that possession. Go try to win that offensive possession. Go try to win that defensive possession, and just have that mindset of don't start looking too far ahead. And that's going to be, that's one of our biggest challenges, probably, having a really talented team is, again, I said this earlier, don't fall in love with all the things people are saying about you. We got a lot of dudes that love to be on Twitter, but there's never been a game that's been won on Twitter. It's won on the floor, it's won, on the field or wherever. And we've got to understand that, and we've got to stay focused. And I love our team. I think they're a group of winners. I think they want to be really, really good. I think they're willing to be coached, and they're going to have to be, if we're going to get to where we want to get to. So, but I love the way our season kind of sets up, where you can break it into chunks going down the stretch, and we're excited about what's ahead of us here for sure.
All right, thanks, Coach Watson. Just to wrap up that third quarter, a few things that were mentioned. Dustin mentioned, pivoting and failing fast. Some things I've learned, getting into real estate. Another thing, Gary Keller of Keller Williams said, sometimes we are succeeding so slow that we think we're failing. And, I think like Coach Prock's group could maybe feel that way, being 7-7, although they're getting better and better and prepared for what's coming. They might feel like they're failing at this very moment when they're actually succeeding. So that's my thoughts on the third quarter.